Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to this plugin review of the Wilkinson Audio DeBleeder plugin. So normally a lot of companies approach me about doing reviews and demos of their plugins, but in all honesty, I saw this thing on a Facebook ad, and I was like, this is really cool. So I reached out to them first, and they were kind enough to send over a copy for me to review. So thanks to the guys at Wilkinson Audio for that. And man, I'm happy they did. This thing is really cool. So what DeBleeder does is it removes or helps remove or reduce bleed from multi-track recordings. Now, obviously, the most common source of this is going to be cymbal bleed in your close mics in your drum recordings. But as we'll find out later in this video, you can use it for other purposes as well. So here's just a quick demo of it on the kick-in mic on a drum kit. So it's got its own internal bypass here. So I'll bypass it, and let's hear what this kick sounds like without it in, and then I'll kick it in. So you might think, oh, it's just a gate. No, it's not just a gate. It intelligently reduces the cymbal bleed without affecting the tone of the drum that you're on. It's even reducing the snare bleed here as well, and the kick drum remains completely unaffected. The full tail, although there's not much of a release or tail on the kick drum hit, but the full tail of the tone is still there with basically just reducing the background noise. So this thing is really, really cool. Let me give you a quick tutorial. There's 4 main knobs here. The fundamental allows you to set the fundamental frequency range of the drum that you're trying to isolate. So obviously it's down lower for the kick drum. It uses this frequency information to detect what's actually a drum hit and what's just background noise. So what I like to do is I like to click this audition button, and then I'll sweep around the fundamental knob, and I will search for the fundamental frequency of the drum that I'm on. So this turns on a filter, so you're just hearing that fundamental range so you can hear it better. And you can also adjust a bandwidth here. So you have your wide band and narrow band. I usually keep it somewhere in the middle. For drums that have a bit more of like a full frequency range, like snare drum, for example, I'll open this up a bit. Something like kick drum, you can keep it a little bit more narrow, though. So notice when I swept this up, it was detecting more of the snare drum as a drum hit. So when I pulled it down, it wasn't detecting the snare drum as a drum hit as much, and it was more or less suppressing that as noise, just like it is with the cymbals. So the range knob limits the frequency range that the algorithm will affect. So if you pull this to the right, you'll get a more gated sound, and to the left, you'll get more of a natural ring. More of the natural ring in the drum will come through. But you also get more cymbals because it's allowing the frequency range of the cymbals to not be suppressed. And then the reduction knob controls how much suppression is happening. There's a threshold for this here and a knee control as well. So it pretty much functions like a compressor here. So most of the time I'll use the soft knee, and then I'll just sweep around the reduction and the threshold. You don't want to go too far up because that'll just gate everything. It'll get rid of everything. So you have to kind of sweep this around, find the point where just the kick hits are coming through, and then adjust your reduction. So all the way to the left is no reduction or no suppression. All the way to the right is full suppression, full reduction. I typically like to work in the smooth or the soft knee mode. It just tends to be a little bit smoother sounding to me. And then you have release time. So as you pull this up, this will let more of the ring through. So there you go. That's just on kick. Let's find another track for it. Here's the snare bottom track. Let's just solo this out. I'll turn it off here for a moment. Let's see what this sounds like. So again, I would just start by turning the audition button on, sweeping around the fundamental, trying to find the fundamental frequency range of the snare drum. Obviously, with snare drum, we can't go as hard on the release time as we could with the kick drum, but again, the results are amazing. So this is before. One of the biggest problems is hi-hat and cymbals in the snare track. One of the number one reasons why I always find myself layering snare mics with samples is because I can't get the tone isolated enough. And if I use just a standard gate or like another plugin like Drum Leveler, which I love Drum Leveler, don't get me wrong, it just sounds cut off. Here, it still sounds natural to me. It doesn't sound like like a regular gate that's just cutting out the signal. It's intelligently doing so. Here's the snare side track. Let's give this one a shot. So there's all that ride cymbal in there. Then we've got snare top as well. And then all three snares together. So probably one of the number one uses for this is going to be isolating the cymbals and the toms. One of the biggest issues I always have when tracking drums is you end up with a lot of cymbal bleed in the tom mics. So let's check out the first and second toms here. So yeah, there's quite a bit of ride cymbal and crash in there. Let's kick in DeBleeder for tom 1. So there's the fundamental frequency. I mean, it's just completely cutting out the cymbals in the background. Here's with it bypassed. And here's with it in. Yeah, that's great. And then on the second tom, let's pull that one in. Here's with it bypassed on the floor tom. Yeah, usually the floor tom is the worst because the floor tom's usually right next to the ride cymbal. So anytime they play ride, the floor tom has got a whole bunch of ride in it. in the past I've found myself going in and literally cutting out every single like pretty much the entire floor tom part except for the floor tom is actually hit because I don't want all of that ride cymbal bleed. So that's really nice. Let's give this a shot with everything. And actually, you know what? There's one more track I want to look at. So when we were recording this tune, we were sort of experimenting with some different kick mic positions. So we had like a kick in, kick out, and then we had kick front. I think we put like an SM57 or something on the front, the batter side of the drum head. And I really like the sort of thwack that I'm getting from the kick here, but I don't like the fact that I'm getting all the cymbal bleed and the snare drum as well. So here's what it sounded like before. We're getting a little bit of cymbal noise in there, but we're really cutting out the snare drum. And we could use this as an additional kick mic to add some punch to the overall kick tone. So here's with all of them out. So I'm just going to bypass all of them just to see what this sounds like before and after. So the great thing about this is when you've reduced the cymbal bleed on your close mics, this means you can actually let the overheads and the room mics do what they were intended to do. You can pull them up in the mix and get that nice room tone. You can also pull up the toms more. They don't sound like they're buried in the back. And that's always been an issue with drum mixes, is trying to find a way to isolate the close mics so that you can pull up the rooms and the overheads, and you're not just compounding cymbal noise on top of more cymbal noise. So here's another quick example of something you can do with DeBleeder that's beyond its normal use. Its normal use is obviously meant for drum bleed. Here we were recording this girl playing acoustic, and we were doing a video for the iZotope Spire, which I put out a couple days ago. And we tracked her voice with a ribbon mic, which is bidirectional, doesn't pick up much from the sides, and then a condenser mic for the guitar. And basically, I just took the recordings we made in the Spire and moved them over into Logic so I could add some other effects. Now, the problem is when I try to add EQ and compression on her voice to control the dynamics a bit, it's also squashing and EQing the guitar bleed in the background. So DeBleeder actually works pretty decent for like really basic acoustic guitar bleed in the vocal mic. It doesn't really work well the other way around. I can't isolate the guitar from her voice using a condenser mic, but with a ribbon mic or a dynamic mic, it will work. So here's what her vocal track sounds like just by itself with DeBleeder bypassed.
And I feel it more than you know.
And then here's with DeBleeder in.
And I feel it more than you know. I live my life so fully, but it still won't go. More than the trees miss the leaves when it snows. More than I love feeling bass in my bones.
So you have to be gentle with it, but it really does help to remove the guitar from her vocal track when she's not singing. So now I can kick in EQ and compression, and I'm more or less just compressing her voice, and the guitar bleed essentially just sounds like really bad headphone bleed at this point.
And I feel it more than you know. I live my life
So anyway, that's the Wilkinson Audio DeBleeder. A couple examples you can use it on. It's obviously its intended purpose is for drums, but as you can see here, it has some other uses as well. So if you can't tell, I really love this plugin. Between this and drum leveler, and then maybe just some EQ, you could do a full drum mix. Not including things like reverb, but you could do a full drum mix with those three plugins and make some killer drum mixes using this for isolation and gating, using drum leveler for like heavy gating and compression, and then the EQ for, well, just EQ. So I'll leave a link in the video description below where you can check this out. It's not expensive. It's $80 normally. At the time of making this video, it was on sale for $30. So I'll leave a link for that in the video description below. You guys can check me out on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on Patreon if you'd like to make a monthly contribution. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.